The hull breach came easier than expected. Red emergency lights pulsed through the corridors of Prometheus Station, casting long shadows that danced along the walls like restless spirits. The silence was wrong. A space station should never be this quiet. Blood floated in perfect spheres through the zero gravity, catching the crimson emergency lights. The security team lay scattered throughout the corridor, their weapons unfired, their bodies bearing strange burn patterns that seemed to have originated from within. Something had cooked them from the inside out. The security camera footage played in the briefing room back on Earth, faces grim as they watched the massacre unfold. A blurred figure moved with impossible speed through the station's main corridor. Wherever it passed, personnel collapsed. No gunfire, no defense, just swift, merciless death. "We've lost contact with Prometheus Station," the mission commander's voice narrated over the silent footage. "All 87 personnel." This happened in under 3 minutes. The recording ended with a final frame, something humanoid but distinctly not human turning toward the camera. Blue scales caught the light, wings unfurled, then static. Montana Winters had a way of keeping a man honest. James Walker stood on the porch of his cabin, watching his breath cloud in the morning air. 68 years had etched deep lines into his face, mapping 4 decades of military service and the personal losses that had accompanied them. His body remained solid, maintained through stubborn discipline rather than vanity. Old habits died hard, especially for a man who'd spent his life in special forces. The coffee steamed in his mug, black, no sugar, just like the military had taught him, just like Margaret had hated. 5 years since cancer had taken her, and he still made coffee the way she despised every morning. Some rituals were about remembering, not enjoying. He spotted the black SUV winding up the mountain road long before it reached his cabin. Government plates. In his 40 years of service, nothing good had ever come from unmarked government vehicles arriving unannounced. Walker stepped back inside, placing the coffee mug on the counter. He moved to the gun cabinet, unlocking it with practiced ease. The weight of the sidearm felt familiar in his hand, another old friend that had stayed with him through the decades. The SUV parked beside his truck. 2 men emerged, both in dark suits despite the snow. Walker recognized the older one immediately, though the years had turned General Phillips's hair completely white. The last time they'd seen each other had been at Margaret's funeral. Walker tucked the pistol into the back of his jeans and opened the door before they could knock. "Been a long time, Frank," Walker said, not stepping aside to invite them in. General Phillips nodded, snow collecting on his shoulders. "Too long, James. Mind if we come in? It's important." Walker studied the second man, younger, rigid posture, eyes constantly scanning. Military intelligence, most likely. After a moment's hesitation, Walker stepped back, gesturing them inside. "Still making that awful black sludge you call coffee?" Phillips asked, removing his gloves. "Still drinking it like water," Walker replied. "What brings the head of Space Security Agency to my doorstep? I've been retired for 8 years. Phillips didn't answer immediately, instead looking around the sparse cabin. Photos of Margaret adorned one wall. A collection of military commendations gathered dust on another. The cabin was clean organized, the home of a man who'd never fully left the service behind. "We need you back, James. One last mission." Walker laughed, a short, harsh sound. "That's what you said before Yemen and before Qatar. There's always one last mission. This one's different." Phillips nodded to his companion, who placed a secured tablet on the kitchen table. "This one matters more than any operation you've ever been part of." Walker didn't move toward the tablet. "I hung up my boots for good, Frank. I'm done watching young men and women die because old men like us can't solve problems without violence. This isn't about politics or resources," Phillips said, his voice dropping. "This is about survival. Something has escaped containment. Something we don't fully understand, and it's already killed 87 of our people." Walker's eyes narrowed. "A bioweapon leak, that's CDC territory, not mine." "What a bioweapon?" Phillips replied. "Something far more complex, something that requires your particular expertise." The younger man spoke for the first time. "Sir, with respect, we should brief Colonel Walker properly if we expect his cooperation." Phillips sighed. "James, this is Agent Wilson. He's been assigned to this operation from the beginning." Walker crossed his arms. "What operation?" Phillips tapped the tablet. "Project Eclipse, a joint research initiative studying non-terrestrial biological entities. You're saying aliens. Walker's tone was flat with disbelief. I'm saying we discovered something extraordinary, Phillips corrected, and now it's killed everyone on Prometheus Station. Walker finally reached for the tablet, entering the security code Phillips provided. The video from the station played again, this time with additional footage showing the aftermath. Bodies floating through corridors, lab equipment destroyed, and glimpses, just glimpses, of something humanoid but not human moving through the station. The entity escaped primary containment 3 days ago, Phillips explained. Secondary containment protocols failed 2 hours later. We lost contact with the station shortly after that. Walker studied the footage carefully. These burn patterns, they're precise, targeted. This isn't some mindless creature lashing out. It's hunting. He looked up at Phillips. Why me? You have active personnel with more recent combat experience. Because whatever this thing is, it was created using proprietary military technology, Phillips said quietly. Technology you helped develop during Operation Desert Storm. Walker's expression hardened. The neural inhibitors, those were designed to temporarily incapacitate enemy combatants, not create monsters. The science evolved, Phillips said. Project Eclipse was attempting to integrate non-terrestrial biological components with human neural pathways. The neural inhibitor technology was modified to create a control mechanism, which clearly failed, Walker said, disgust evident in his voice. You turned a human being into a weapon, and now you've lost control of it. Phillips didn't deny it. We need someone who understands both the technology and how to counter an enhanced threat. Someone who can make the hard calls if necessary. You want me to kill it? We want you to neutralize the threat by any means necessary, Phillips corrected. If that means termination, so be it. Walker stared at the image on the screen, the blurred figure with blue scales and wings. What was it? Before your people turned it into this, Phillips and Wilson exchanged glances. That information is compartmentalized, Wilson said. Walker handed the tablet back. Then so is my assistance. Good luck with your monster hunt, gentlemen. Phillips sighed deeply. Damn it, James, this isn't a request. The president has authorized emergency protocols. You're being reactivated. I'm 68 years old. You can't reactivate me. Special Provision 47B of your retirement contract says otherwise. Phillips' voice was gentle but firm. I wouldn't be here if there were any other options. Walker turned away, looking at the photo of Margaret on the wall. She was smiling, holding a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked for their anniversary. What aren't you telling me, Frank? The entity from Project Eclipse isn't just dangerous, Phillips said after a moment's hesitation. It's potentially world-ending. The symbiotic organism it carries has capabilities we barely understand. In the wrong hands, it could be weaponized on a scale that makes nuclear arsenals look primitive. And whose hands created it in the first place? Walker asked bitterly. We did, Phillips admitted, and now we need to make it right. Walker closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he was looking at Margaret's photo. You always said I had a savior complex, he murmured to her memory. Guess you were right. He turned back to Phillips. I want full access to all Project Eclipse files. No redactions, no need-to-know bullshit. If I'm hunting this thing, I need to know exactly what I'm up against. Phillips nodded. Agreed. And I picked my own support team. No agency yes men. Within reason, Phillips stipulated. But we've already assigned Dr. Rachel Miller as your scientific advisor. She's one of the few people familiar with the symbiotic organism who wasn't stationed on Prometheus. Walker considered this. Fine, when do we leave? Transport is standing by at Helena Regional. We need to move quickly. Walker looked around his cabin, the home he'd built with Margaret, the sanctuary he'd retreated to after her death. Give me 30 minutes to pack. As Phillips and Wilson headed back to their vehicle, Walker returned to the gun cabinet. Beyond his sidearm lay weapons he'd hoped never to use again, specialized equipment from operations that officially never happened. He began selecting items, methodically, muscle memory, guiding his choices. One last mission, he said to the empty room. I promise, Margaret. Just one more. The SSA headquarters in Arlington hummed with activity. Walker strode through security checkpoints. His military ID resurrected from retirement. his presence drawing curious glances from younger personnel. His tactical gear had raised eyebrows at the airport, but Phillips's authorization had smoothed the way. In the briefing room, Walker found himself facing a wall of digital displays showing the Prometheus station from various angles. Satellite imagery, structural schematics, personnel files, the full operational picture. Colonel Walker, a woman's voice drew his attention. I'm Dr. Rachel Miller. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-40s perhaps, with keen eyes that evaluated him with scientific precision. Her handshake was firm professional. Doctor, Walker acknowledged, I understand you're familiar with our target. With the symbiotic organism, yes, she corrected, though familiar might be generous. We've barely scratched the surface of understanding its capabilities. Walker noted her careful language. But you were part of Project Eclipse. I consulted on the biological containment protocols, she said. I wasn't involved in the integration process or the neural inhibitor modifications. Her tone carried a hint of disapproval that Walker recognized. Someone with enough knowledge to be troubled by the project, but not enough authority to stop it. What can you tell me about the entity we're facing? Walker asked. Miller hesitated, glancing toward the security cameras. The official briefing will cover the basics. Perhaps we should discuss specifics en route to the station. Walker understood immediately. She didn't trust her surroundings. Interesting. The briefing commenced with General Phillips outlining the mission parameters. A small team would dock with Prometheus Station, assess the situation, locate the entity, and neutralize the threat. Extraction would follow, with the station potentially being scuttled afterward to eliminate any trace of Project Eclipse. As Wilson detailed the tactical approach, Walker studied the proposed entry points and containment measures. Something wasn't adding up. This plan assumes the entity is still confined to the medical bay, Walker interrupted. But your own surveillance shows movement throughout the station. Why would it return to what was essentially its prison? Wilson frowned at the interruption. The medical bay contains the neural inhibitor control systems. Our analysts believe the entity may be attempting to permanently disable them. If it's intelligent enough to understand that, Walker countered, it's intelligent enough to have done so immediately after breaking containment. It's had 3 days. He pointed to the station schematics. Your approach has us entering through the main airlock, which requires passing through 3 high-traffic areas. If I were hunting us, that's exactly where I'd set up an ambush. Phillips exchanged looks with Wilson. What do you suggest? We use the maintenance airlock here. Walker indicated a secondary entry point near the station's environmental control systems. Less direct, but also less predictable. And we bring EMP devices. If this thing has integrated with technology disrupting electronic systems, might give us an advantage. EMPs would disable our own equipment, Wilson objected. Hardened tactical gear only, Walker said. Old school. Sometimes the most effective countermeasures are the least sophisticated. Phillips nodded slowly. Make the necessary adjustments. Colonel Walker's experience takes priority here. As the briefing concluded, Walker noticed Miller watching him with renewed interest. She approached as the room cleared. That was impressive, she said quietly. Most military personnel would have accepted the tactical assessment without question. Most military personnel haven't spent 40 years learning how assumption gets people killed, Walker replied. There's something you're not telling me about this entity, Doctor. I'd prefer to know before we're locked in a space station with it. Miller glanced around again, then spoke in a near whisper. Her name is Emma Grant. She is one of the most brilliant xenobiologists in the country. MIT graduate recruited directly into government research. Walker kept his face neutral, though internally he cursed. Phillips had conveniently omitted that their target was a woman. The briefing made it sound like we're hunting some kind of alien-human hybrid weapon. That's exactly what the program directors want you to think, Miller said. It's easier to eliminate a what than a who. But Emma is still in there, at least partially. The symbiotic organism hasn't completely overwritten her consciousness, which makes her case unique and valuable. Valuable enough that someone might want to preserve the project rather than terminate it, Walker concluded, despite the casualties. Miller's expression confirmed his suspicion. I should get to the lab. We're preparing specialized tranquilizers that might work on the symbiotic organism. As she turned to leave, Walker caught her arm. One more thing, Doctor. If you're not telling me the whole truth now, I can't protect you later. I could say the same to you, Colonel, she replied gently, removing his hand. We all have our orders. The question is, which ones we choose to follow. Walker watched her go, the weight of the mission settling more heavily on his shoulders. He'd been sent to kill a monster only to discover the monster might still be human. It wouldn't be the first time the government had lied to him, but it might be the most consequential. In his quarters, Walker unpacked his gear methodically. Among his personal items was a worn photograph of Margaret, which he placed beside the bed. Getting complicated already, he told her image. Wish you were here to tell me what the right thing is. The photo offered no guidance, but he remembered what Margaret had always told him during his darkest moments in the service. Your job isn't to follow orders. Your job is to protect people who can't protect themselves. Walker checked his sidearm, an old habit that brought momentary comfort. In 8 hours, they would launch for Prometheus Station. In 12, he would face whoever waited there, and then he would have to decide which orders to follow. The transport ship hummed with tension as it approached Prometheus Station. Through the viewport, the station hung against the backdrop of stars, its exterior seemingly undamaged. Only the absence of running lights indicated anything amiss. Walker completed his equipment check for the third time. The tactical gear felt familiar, though heavier than he remembered. Age hadn't been kind to his joints, but adrenaline was a powerful analgesic. Beside him, Dr. Miller reviewed data on her tablet, her expression troubled. Having second thoughts, Doctor? Walker asked, keeping his voice low. Wondering if we're making a terrible mistake, she replied without looking up. The symbiotic organism responds to threat perception. If Emma feels threatened, the organism's defensive capabilities will activate automatically. And those capabilities include cooking people from the inside out. Miller nodded grimly. The organism can generate controlled electromagnetic bursts. It's a defensive mechanism, but devastating against electronics and human nervous systems. Convenient weapon, Walker noted. Almost like that was the point all along. Miller finally looked at him, her eyes haunted. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The original research was focused on medical applications, neural repair, limb regeneration. Somewhere along the line, the priorities shifted. They always do, Walker said. Money flows to weapons, not medicine. Tale as old as time. Their conversation was interrupted as Captain Reynolds, their pilot, announced final approach to the station. Walker secured his gear and moved toward the airlock with the 4-person security team Phillips had assigned. Young, capable soldiers, all of whom regarded Walker with a mixture of respect and skepticism. The old man, pulled from retirement for one last mission, was a cliché none of them had expected to encounter in real life. Remember, Walker addressed the team. We maintain communication at all times. Any unusual readings, any movement, you report immediately. This isn't a standard hostile. Conventional tactics may not apply. With respect, sir, one of the soldiers, Adams, according to his tag, said, we've been briefed on advanced containment protocols. We know what we're facing. You've been briefed, Walker agreed, but you haven't faced it. I've read the same reports you have. And one thing is clear. This entity took down an entire security team without taking a single casualty. So watch each other's backs and follow my lead. The docking procedure completed with a metallic thunk that reverberated through the transport. Walker activated his helmet systems, checking the tactical display and communications link. Archaic by current standards, but hardened against EMP, a precaution that had raised eyebrows among the younger team members. As the airlock cycled, Walker positioned himself at the front, weapon ready. The maintenance access corridor beyond was dark emergency lighting, casting red shadows that reminded him of blood in zero gravity. His boots magnetized to the floor with each step, the soft thud echoing in the enclosed space. Life support is functioning, Miller reported through the comm, monitoring readings from the transport. Atmosphere is stable, but temperatures are lower than normal operational parameters. Power seems to be diverted from non-essential systems. Conserving energy, Walker murmured, or redirecting it. The team moved methodically through the maintenance corridor, sweeping each junction before proceeding. Walker felt the familiar flow of combat awareness, heightened senses, controlled breathing, the world narrowing to immediate threats and opportunities. Despite his age, this state came back to him like an old dance. They encountered the first body near the environmental control room. A technician, his face frozen in an expression of surprise rather than pain. No visible injuries, but the same internal burning pattern they'd seen in the footage. No sign of defensive wounds, Walker noted, examining the body without touching it. Whatever hit him, he never saw it coming. Or recognized it as a threat, Miller suggested through the comm. They proceeded deeper into the station, following the route Walker had mapped to avoid main corridors. The silence remained oppressive, broken only by their breathing and the soft thud of magnetic boots. Near a junction leading to the central hub, Walker held up his fist, signaling a halt. Something wasn't right. The emergency lighting flickered slightly, a pattern too regular to be malfunction. Someone's diverting power, he whispered into the comm, cycling it through different systems. Could be automated protocols, Adams suggested. Walker shook his head. Too irregular. This is deliberate. He gestured for the team to hold position while he advanced alone to the junction. Years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming that they were being watched. The central hub should have been the busiest part of the station, a nexus of laboratories, command centers, and crew quarters. Now it was a tomb, bodies floating where the artificial gravity had failed. Walker activated his thermal scanner, sweeping slowly across the visible area. Nothing. No heat signatures, except the fading warmth of the dead. Colonel Walker, Miller's voice came through the comm, unusually tense. I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations in your sector. The pattern matches what we observed before the entity attacked the station's security team. Walker backed away from the junction slowly. Team, prepare to. The attack came not from the central hub, but from behind them. One moment the corridor was empty, the next a blur of motion struck the rear guard. The soldier didn't even have time to scream as he was lifted off his feet, his rifle clattering uselessly against the floor. Contact! Walker shouted, spinning to face the threat, his weapon raised. The entity moved with impossible speed, tossing the lifeless soldier aside and advancing on the next. In the red emergency lighting, Walker caught glimpses of blue scales. Wings folded tight against a humanoid form, eyes glowing with an internal light that wasn't entirely human. The team opened fire, but the entity seemed to anticipate their moves, twisting in ways that shouldn't have been possible in the confined space. Each time a soldier lined up a shot, it was no longer where it had been. Two more soldiers fell in rapid succession, their bodies convulsing as internal systems overloaded. The fourth, Adams, managed to activate an EMP grenade, tossing it toward the entity. The pulse rippled through the corridor. The entity faltered momentarily, its movements becoming jerky. Walker seized the opportunity, firing a specialized tranquilizer round directly into what appeared to be its torso. The entity staggered, then focused on Walker with an intensity that felt like a physical force. For the first time he could see it clearly. A woman's form covered in blue scales that caught the light like Sapphire's wings, partially extended from her back face, retaining human features beneath scaling that crept across her cheeks. Her eyes found his, and Walker felt a jolt of shock. They were human eyes, brown, exhausted, and aware. Shoot me, she said, her voice hoarse but distinctly human. Please, him. Walker's weapon remained steady, but doubt crept into his mind. This wasn't the mindless monster Phillips had described. This was a woman, transformed, dangerous but conscious. Grant, he said, recalling Miller's information. Emma Grant. The entity, Emma, flinched at the name. Her scales rippled, changing from deep blue to a purple that seemed to pulse with internal energy. How do you know that name? She asked, her voice a mixture of suspicion and desperate hope. Dr. Miller told me, Walker replied, maintaining his aim, but not firing. She said you're still in there. Emma's laugh was bitter, broken. Parts of me. Not enough. Her gaze flicked to Adams, who was positioning himself for a clear shot. Tell your man to stand down. I don't want to hurt anyone else. You killed 3 of my team in the last 30 seconds, Walker pointed out. They were going to kill me, Emma countered. The symbiote reacts to threats automatically. I can't always control it. Her expression twisted with pain. There's an implant at the base of my skull, neural inhibitor technology. They use it to control me, to make me... She broke off, wings twitching involuntarily. Walker kept his weapon trained on her, but signaled Adams to hold his position. You said you wanted me to shoot you. I do, Emma said, her voice breaking, before they activate the implant again, before they make me kill you too. Her scales shifted color again, darkening. You don't understand what I've done, what they've made me do. I understand more than you think, Walker replied. Through his comm, he could hear Miller urgently asking for status, but he ignored her for the moment. How many people on this station did you kill willingly, and how many when they triggered the implant? Emma's eyes widened slightly. You know about the trigger? I helped develop the original technology, Walker admitted. Never imagined it would be used like this. Something changed in Emma's posture. A slight relaxation, a faint hope. Then you know what it does to me. You know I can't stop it once it starts. Walker made a decision that went against every protocol in his mission brief. He lowered his weapon slightly, not entirely, but enough to signal a de-escalation. If I was going to kill you, Dr. Grant, I would have done it already. Colonel, Adams hissed. What are you doing? Stand down, Sergeant, Walker ordered, without taking his eyes off Emma. That's an order. Emma watched this exchange with wary confusion. You were sent to terminate me. I was sent to neutralize a threat, Walker corrected. I'm still assessing exactly what that threat is. He studied her, noting the way her scales rippled with her emotions, how her wings pressed tight against her back when she felt threatened. The symbiotic organism responds to your emotional state. Yes, confirmed. Fear makes it defensive. Anger makes it aggressive. She touched one of the scales on her arm. When I'm calm, it's easier to maintain control. And the implant overrides that control. Emma's expression darkened. It triggers the symbiote's defensive responses artificially, creates a feedback loop I can't break. When that happens, I'm not me anymore. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station, shattering the tense quiet. Emma's entire body went rigid, scales rippling from blue to deep purple. No, she whispered. No, no, no. What's happening? Walker demanded, raising his weapon again. They know you're here. Emma gasped, her body beginning to convulse. They're triggering the implant remotely. Get away from me. Run. Walker could see the transformation beginning, her eyes shifting from brown to a golden glow, her movements becoming more predatory. He made another split-second decision and activated his comm. Miller, the entity, is Dr. Emma Grant. She has neural inhibitor implant technology that's being remotely activated. Is there any way to block the signal? Miller's voice came back shocked. You've made contact. She's communicating. Not for long if we don't stop whatever signal is triggering her implant. Walker snapped. Options, Doctor. An EMP might temporarily disrupt it, Miller replied after a moment's hesitation. But it would need to be precisely calibrated. Too strong, and it could damage the implant itself, which could kill her if it's integrated with her brainstem. Walker looked at Adams. How many EMP grenades do you have left? 2, sir, Adams replied, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this was taking. But our orders were to neutralize a threat, Walker cut him off, not execute a victim. Emma had backed against the wall, her wings spread defensively, fighting visibly against the implant's effects. Her scales continued darkening, energy crackling along her spine in patterns that made Walker's eyes hurt. Please, she begged, her voice distorting as the transformation progressed. I can't hold it back much longer. Walker made his decision. Adams, give me the grenades and get back to the transport. Tell Miller to prepare for a wounded civilian. Sir, I can't leave you. That's an order, Sergeant. Walker's voice carried the full weight of his 40 years of command. Now, Adams hesitated only a moment longer before handing over the EMP grenades and retreating down the corridor. Walker turned back to Emma, who was now hunched over in visible pain. Dr. Grant, he said firmly, I'm going to try something. It might hurt, but it might also disrupt the implant signal. Emma's golden eyes fixed on him, the humanity in them fading rapidly. Why are you helping me? Because a long time ago I promised someone I'd protect people who couldn't protect themselves, Walker replied. He calibrated the grenade to its lowest setting and stepped closer. This will be easier if you don't move. Emma's laugh was hollow, distorted. I'm about to lose control completely, and you're worried about making it easier. I'm adaptable. Walker positioned himself beside her close enough that the grenade would affect her implant, but hopefully far enough that the EMP wouldn't completely disable his own hardened gear. Ready. Emma nodded, her movements becoming increasingly jerky as the implant gained control. Walker activated the grenade and shielded his eyes as the electromagnetic pulse rippled outward. Emma screamed a sound of pure agony that echoed through the corridor. She collapsed to the floor, body convulsing. Walker knelt beside her, checking for vital signs. Her pulse was rapid but present, her breathing ragged. Slowly, the golden glow receded from her eyes, the brown irises returning. The scales along her body shifted from aggressive purple back to a more subdued blue. She looked up at him with exhausted gratitude. "It worked," she whispered. "Temporarily, at least." "Can you walk?" Walker asked, offering his hand. Emma took it hesitantly, her scaled fingers cool against his skin. She tried to stand but stumbled immediately. Walker caught her before she hit the floor, one arm around her waist. The scales under his hand felt warm, almost feverish. "How long since they've fed you?" he asked, noting her weakened state. "I don't remember," Emma admitted, her voice hollow. "After the first week, I stopped counting days." Walker pulled her arm across his shoulders, taking most of her weight. "We need to move. They'll try activating the implant again once they realize the first attempt failed." "There's a shuttle bay 2 levels up," Emma said, leaning heavily against him. "But there's a faster way through the maintenance tunnels." "Lead on," Walker said, supporting her as they moved deeper into the station. They navigated through narrow maintenance corridors, avoiding the central areas where security systems would be most active. Emma's condition improved slightly as they moved, though she still relied on Walker for support. "I was researching symbiotic organisms," she said suddenly as they paused at a junction. "On an exoplanet survey, deep ocean vents, we'd found something that could bond with host organisms." Her laugh was bitter. "I thought it was breakthrough science, tissue regeneration, neural pathway repair." "They had other ideas," Walker guessed. Emma nodded. "They strapped me to a table, injected it directly into my spinal column." She paused, catching her breath. "Every other species they tested died within hours. The symbiote consumed them completely. Humans aren't supposed to survive conscious. But you did. I felt it spread through my body," she said, her voice distant with remembered horror. "Changing me, trying to erase who I was. It wanted to consume my mind. I wouldn't let it." They reached a maintenance ladder leading upward. Emma looked at it dubiously, her wings twitching with fatigue. "I'll go first," Walker said. "You follow. I'll catch you if you fall." Emma nodded gratefully. They ascended slowly, Emma's clawed hands gripping the rungs with obvious effort. When they reached the upper level, she sagged against the wall, scales fluctuating between blue and pale gray. "I need a minute," she gasped. Walker checked his chronometer. 17 minutes until Phillips would send in the secondary team, the real kill team, he suspected. He guided Emma into a storage alcove barely large enough for both of them. "The implant," he said as she caught her breath. "Can it be removed?" "Not without killing me," Emma replied, touching the back of her neck. "It's fused with my brainstem, but it's degrading. The symbiote keeps trying to metabolize it." "How long before it succeeds?" "Days, maybe less." She met his eyes. "That's why I wanted you to kill me. When the implant fails completely, I don't know if I'll maintain control." Walker studied her face, the way the scales followed the curve of her cheekbones, the human skin that remained around her mouth and eyes. Despite everything, she was still fighting to remain herself. "You said the symbiote tried to erase you," he noted, "but it didn't succeed." "I'm stubborn," Emma said, a ghost of pride entering her voice. "I wouldn't let go. I can feel it even now, trying to assert dominance, but I'm still here. Still me." "That's remarkable," Walker said with genuine admiration. "That's what they said before they weaponized it," Emma replied bitterly. "They couldn't control me directly, so they built the implant. Made it so they could trigger the symbiote's defensive instincts artificially." Her claws scraped against the metal floor. "Turned me into exactly what I'd fought so hard not to become." Walker's hand moved to her shoulder, a gesture of comfort he hadn't consciously intended. "We'll find a way to help you." Emma stiffened at the contact but didn't pull away. Why risk everything for something like me?" "Because I've spent my life following orders without questioning them enough," Walker replied honestly, "and I'm too old to make that mistake again." His comm unit crackled to life. "Colonel Walker," Miller's voice came through tense with worry. "Adams returned to the transport. He says you've made contact with Dr. Grant and are attempting to extract her rather than neutralize the threat. Is this accurate?" Walker met Emma's eyes as he responded. Affirmative. The situation has been reassessed. Dr. Grant is a victim, not a hostile. Implant technology is being used to control her actions against her will. Colonel, Miller's voice lowered, General Phillips is monitoring this channel. He's ordering you to terminate immediately. Walker wasn't surprised. Tell the general that his orders have been received. Also tell him that I'm bringing Dr. Grant in for debriefing and medical evaluation. The intelligence she can provide about Project Eclipse is too valuable to lose. James or Phillips' voice replaced Miller's. You know what that thing is capable of. You've seen the footage. It's killed over 80 people. Walker corrected. And yes, I know exactly what she's capable of. I also know what you're capable of, Frank, including lying to me about the nature of this mission. This isn't about ethics, Phillips snapped. It's about national security. It's about covering up a black site operation that violated every ethical guideline in the book. Walker countered. I'm bringing her in, Frank, and then we're going to have a long conversation about Project Eclipse. He cut the comm before Phillips could respond. Emma was watching him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. They'll send a kill team, she warned. Probably, Walker agreed, which means we need to move, now. They continued through the maintenance tunnels, Emma growing stronger as they moved, relying less on Walker for support. They reached a junction near the shuttle bay, and Walker checked the corridor through an access panel. Empty, but security cameras tracked in automated patterns along the ceiling. How's your flying? He asked, nodding toward her wings. Emma glanced at the torn membranes. Not good, not far. The symbiote can repair damage, but it takes time I haven't had. We go fast then, Walker decided. Straight to the bay, no stops. Emma nodded, but her hand tightened on his arm. Walker, there's something you need to know. About who created me. Later, when we're off this station. No, now. Her scales darkened with emotion. Because if you're going to leave me here, I'd rather know before I start hoping. Walker turned to face her fully. I'm not leaving you. Emma's voice went flat, reciting facts like she was presenting research data. The project that created me wasn't a foreign power or terrorist organization. It was the Earth Defense Initiative, a black site operation unauthorized by any oversight committee. I was kidnapped from my university lab in Boston. They held me for 6 months before the bonding. Walker absorbed this, though it confirmed suspicions he had already harbored. Phillips was lying about more than just your identity. I have proof. Emma pulled a data chip from a hidden pocket in what remained of her research uniform. Salvaged it from their systems during my second week here. Personnel files, funding authorizations, experiment logs, everything. Walker stared at the chip, understanding dawning. They sold you. When the program was discontinued, they sold you to hide the evidence. Your mission brief probably said you were hunting an enemy weapon, Emma said, her voice bitter. Truth is, you're hunting your own government's war crime. Walker pocketed the chip, the implications cascading through his mind. The secrecy around this mission, Phillips' insistence on termination rather than capture, the kill team already en route. They sent me because they knew that I'd follow orders, he said slowly. No questions asked. I'm sorry. Don't be. Walker checked his weapon. You just gave me a reason to make sure we both survive. They're going to answer for what they did to you. Emma's eyes widened with surprised hope. For a moment, she looked achingly human despite everything else. You still want to help me, even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are, Walker replied firmly. Now let's move. They entered the corridor, moving swiftly toward the shuttle bay. Emma's movements had a surprising grace despite her weakened state, wings tucked tight against her back. Walker kept pace beside her, weapon ready. The shuttle bay doors stood open ahead, revealing 2 small craft inside. Civilian models with basic flight capability. They were 10 meters away when the overhead lights blazed to full intensity. Freeze! The command echoed through the bay. General Phillips stood on a catwalk above them, flanked by 4 operatives in tactical gear, all weapons trained on Emma. Colonel Walker stepped away from the asset. Walker positioned himself between Emma and the kill team. Stand down, Frank. I'm bringing her in for questioning. Your orders were termination, Phillips replied, his weathered face showing no emotion. You've compromised the mission. The mission was based on false intelligence, Walker countered. The mission is to eliminate a weapon that killed thousands of our people. She's not a weapon, Walker said firmly. She's a victim, and we both know it. Philip's rifle never wavered. It's a thing wearing a human face. Look at it, James. That's not one of us anymore. Walker felt Emma flinch beside him. Something fierce ignited in his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. Her name is Dr. Emma Grant. She's a xenobiologist from MIT who was kidnapped and tortured by our own government. And you will address her as a person, or I will put you down myself. You'd betray your unit for that thing, Phillips asked, genuine disbelief in his voice. I'd betray a system that creates people like her and then tries to bury the evidence, Walker replied evenly. Last chance, Frank. Stand down. Phillips' jaw tightened. Last chance, James. Step away, or we drop you both. Walker shifted his stance, preparing for what would come next. Your funeral. Phillips raised his hand to signal the kill team. Before he could complete the gesture, Emma moved with blinding speed. She launched herself upward, wings spreading as she leapt toward the catwalk. Energy crackled along her scales, not the golden fury of the implant activation, but something controlled, deliberate. She hit the catwalk in a crouch that buckled the metal. The operatives opened fire, but Emma's wings swept forward, somehow deflecting the rounds in bursts of displaced energy. She moved through them like water fast and fluid, her claws finding weak points in their armor with surgical precision. Walker could see the cost of her effort. Each movement made her scales flicker between blue, and purple. Each impact drove her closer to the edge of control. She was fighting on two fronts, against the kill team and against the symbiote's desire to consume them all. Phillips aimed directly at her head. Walker fired first, his shot taking Phillips in the shoulder, spinning him back. The general's return fire went wide, and Walker was already moving, scaling the catwalk ladder. He reached the top as Emma dropped the last operative, her breathing, ragged eyes flickering with traces of gold. Emma, Walker said carefully, using her first name for the first time. It's over. Come back. She turned to him, and for a terrible moment, he wasn't sure if she recognized him. Then the gold faded, and she stumbled, catching herself on the railing. I'm here, she gasped. I'm still here. Phillips struggled to his feet, clutching his wounded shoulder. You're both dead. SSA has already activated the station's self-destruct. You've got 15 minutes before this whole place goes up. Walker grabbed Phillips's comm unit and smashed it. Then we better move fast. You can't run from this, Phillips warned. They'll hunt you across the galaxy. Everything you've ever been, everyone you've ever known. They'll burn it all to get to her. Let them try, Walker replied. He took Emma's hand. Come on. They jumped from the catwalk together. Emma's wings spread, catching enough air to slow their fall. They hit the bay floor, heading for the nearest shuttle. Walker fired up the engines while Emma collapsed into the co-pilot seat, her wings draping over the sides. The shuttle lifted just as explosions started rippling through the station's superstructure. Where do we go? Emma asked, exhaustion evident in her voice. Walker pulled up the navigation system, mind racing through options. Then he saw it. A neutral marker on the edge of the system. A ship that shouldn't be there. There, he said, pointing. Whoever they are, they're not military. Could be worse than human military, Emma warned. Could be better, Walker countered, engaging the engines. Right now, I'll take that chance. The shuttle accelerated away from the dying station. Through the viewport, they watched it collapse in on itself, section by section, erasing all evidence of what had happened there. Emma leaned her head against the seat, scales slowly fading from agitated purple back to exhausted blue. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing me. Walker reached across and took her hand, threading his fingers carefully between her claws. Thank you for trusting me. Behind them, Prometheus Station became a rapidly expanding debris field. Ahead, the unknown ship grew larger in the viewport. Emma's grip tightened on Walker's hand. Whatever happens next, she said, I'm glad I'm not alone anymore. You're not alone, Walker promised. Not ever again. The unknown ship loomed in the viewport, its hull covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the light. No standard Earth Alliance markings, no identifiable design from any human coalition. This was something else entirely. Anything? Walker asked, eyes fixed on the approaching vessel. Emma shook her head, studying the shuttle's sensor readings. Nothing in the database matches. It's not broadcasting any identification signal either. Walker tried the communications array again. Unidentified vessel, this is civilian shuttle Prometheus 7 requesting emergency assistance. We have wounded aboard. Only static answered. The ship dwarfed their shuttle easily 5 times the size of standard military cruisers. As they drew closer, Walker could make out what appeared to be weapon ports along its hull, though none were activated. A strange pulsing light emanated from various points on its surface, creating patterns that almost seemed deliberate. "They're scanning us," Emma said suddenly, her scales shifting to a lighter blue. "I can feel it, like a tingling across my skin." Walker glanced at her. "The symbiote can detect scans. It responds to electromagnetic fields. It's how it communicates with itself." Emma closed her eyes, concentrating. "It's not hostile, more curious." A proximity alert chirped. Walker's hands flew to the controls, but before he could react, the shuttle shuddered as an invisible force seized it. "Tractor beam," Walker muttered, watching the controls go dead in his hands. "High-end tech, military grade." Emma's scales darkened with apprehension. Not military, at least not human military. The implications of her words hung between them as the shuttle was pulled toward the larger ship. A section of the hull irised open, revealing a cavernous docking bay that pulsed with the same strange light that covered the exterior. "Any bright ideas?" Walker asked, already calculating their chances in a confrontation. His sidearm and Emma's abilities against an unknown force. Not odds he'd normally take. Emma's wings twitched nervously. "We could try talking first. Novel approach for a military man." Despite the situation, Walker's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "I'll have you know I've negotiated several successful surrenders in my time." "Theirs or yours?" Emma asked, her voice lighter than he'd heard it yet. "That would be classified information, Doctor." Their shuttle settled onto the deck with barely a tremor. Through the viewport, Walker could see figures moving in the docking bay. Tall, angular, definitely not human. "Stay behind me," Walker said, checking his sidearm one last time. "If this goes badly—" "It won't help," Emma interrupted gently. "If they wanted us dead, they would have disabled our life support systems, not brought us aboard." Walker considered this. "You're assuming they think like us." "I'm assuming intelligence transcends biology," Emma countered. "But I'll still stay behind you if it makes you feel better." The shuttle's airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Walker positioned himself protectively in front of Emma as a figure approached. The being that entered was neither humanoid nor completely alien. Its body resembled a mantis-like insect scaled to human size with a carapace that gleamed like polished bronze. 4 arms moved with unsettling grace, each ending in 3-fingered appendages. Its head featured multifaceted eyes that caught the light in prismatic bursts and what appeared to be sensory antennae that swayed slightly as it studied them. "Dr. Emma Grant," it said, its voice somehow both clicking and melodic, produced by no visible mouth. "Colonel James Walker, I am Arbitrator Xanthar of the Concordance Council." Walker maintained his defensive stance. "How do you know our names?" "We have been monitoring human military expansion for 3 cycles," Xanthar replied. "When Prometheus Station went dark, we investigated. What we discovered troubles the Council greatly." The alien's eyes shifted, focusing on Emma with particular intensity. "You bear the marks of forced symbiosis with a Corellian entity. This is a violation of multiple concordance protocols." Emma stepped forward, her wings unconsciously spreading slightly. "You know what this organism is?" "The Corellians are a protected species under concordance law," Xanthar said. "Semi-sentient, symbiotic organisms with complex neural structures. Your people have been harvesting them from the ocean vents of Kepler 442b in direct contravention of quarantine markers we placed there." Walker processed this information rapidly. "You're saying Earth forces knowingly violated alien territory." "Not knowingly," Xanthar corrected. "Your species lacks the technology to detect our boundary markers. But ignorance does not negate responsibility." Emma's scales shifted to a pale, almost translucent blue. "The symbiote, it's intelligent." "Not in ways you would recognize," Xanthar explained. "It possesses distributed consciousness. It learns, adapts, and preserves experiences across generations. What your scientists interpreted as defensive reactions are actually communication attempts." Walker noted how Emma's posture changed with this revelation. A subtle slump, a new weight added to her shoulders. So when they bonded it to me, they enslaved a sentient being, Xanthar finished, and damaged you both in the process. Walker stepped forward. We need to know. Are we prisoners here? Xanthar's antennae quivered in what might have been amusement or negation. You are not prisoners, Colonel Walker, but we do require your testimony. Testimony about what? Emma asked, her voice strained. About the war crime committed against you and the implications for all species in this sector, Xanthar replied. The Council must determine appropriate responses to this violation. Walker positioned himself slightly closer to Emma. And if we refuse, there is always choice, Xanthar said, head tilting in a curiously human gesture. But know this, if you refuse, both human factions will hunt you until you are captured or killed. If you testify, the Council can offer protection, asylum, freedom. The word hung in the air. Freedom. Walker watched Emma's expression shift, hope and terror warring across her features. Her scales rippled through shades of blue, reflecting her internal conflict. What do you want to know? She said finally. They were escorted through corridors that defied human architectural principles. The walls curved in ways that made Walker's eyes hurt, colors shifting subtly as they passed. Their quarters, a suite of chambers adapted for human physiology, were surprisingly comfortable, though alien in design. Adaptive environments, Emma observed, examining a chair that had reconfigured itself to accommodate her wings. The materials respond to biological feedback. Walker tested the bed cautiously, finding it firmer than it appeared. Convenient. It's called bioresponsive polymorphic matter, Emma said, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her exhaustion. Theoretical in our research. Apparently not so theoretical out here. Walker watched her explore the room, noting how her movements had become more fluid, less pained. You're feeling better. Emma paused, seeming to take internal stock. Yes, the symbiote is calmer here. Almost as if, she trailed off, brow furrowing. As if what? As if it recognizes something, she said softly. Like coming home after being lost. Before Walker could respond, a chime sounded, and Xanthar's voice came through an unseen communication system. The Council is prepared to hear your testimony, if you are ready. Emma's scales darkened with apprehension. Walker crossed to her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You don't have to do this now. Yes, I do, she said, covering his hand with her own, while I still have the courage. The Council chamber defied human expectations. Instead of a courtroom arrangement, 5 elevated platforms housed representatives of different species, none recognizably humanoid. Xanthar occupied one platform, while the others contained beings so alien that Walker struggled to comprehend their forms. One appeared to be composed entirely of crystalline structures that shifted and realigned continuously. Another resembled a collection of luminous gases contained within a translucent membrane. Emma's testimony was measured clinical, the scientist in her documenting her own trauma with detached precision. She detailed her kidnapping from MIT, the forced bonding with the symbiote, the experiments, the torture, the neural implant installation being sold to another faction when the program was discontinued. 3 years of captivity and forced violence. Walker watched her scales shift through colors as she spoke, blue to gray to purple, and back, a visible map of her pain. He wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but the Council had seated them separately. Protocol, Xanthar had explained. Testimony must be uninfluenced. The neural inhibitor triggered specific responses from the symbiote, Emma explained. It created feedback loops of fear and aggression that the symbiote couldn't distinguish from actual threats. When activated, I lost control. The symbiote acted based on artificially induced terror. And this is how they weaponized you, one Council member noted, its translation coming through as clicks and whistles. Emma nodded. I was deployed against test subjects initially, then against enemy combatants, finally against the station personnel when, she faltered, when I became too dangerous to control. You maintained consciousness throughout these episodes. Another Council member asked, its form shifting colors with each word. Yes, Emma whispered. I was aware of everything. I just couldn't stop it. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Walker felt a cold rage building within him, not at Emma, but at the system that had used them both. His testimony followed hers, Shorter focused on his military experience, his role in developing the original neural inhibitor technology, and Philip's deception about the nature of the mission. You were sent to eliminate Dr. Grant, Xanthar stated. Instead, you chose to protect her. Explain. Walker considered his words carefully. My orders were to neutralize a threat. When I encountered Dr. Grant, I recognized that she wasn't the threat. The people controlling her were. You risked your career, your freedom, your life for a being no longer fully human, Xanthar observed. This contradicts your military protocols. Walker looked directly at Emma across the chamber. Human isn't defined by biology. It's defined by compassion, courage, and the capacity to endure. By that measure, Dr. Grant is more human than the people who tried to erase her humanity. Xanthar's antennae quivered. Fascinating. An ethical framework that transcends physical form. The alien paused. One final question, Colonel Walker. Do you consider yourself responsible for what happened to Grant? The question caught Walker off guard. I didn't participate in Project Eclipse. But you created the neural inhibitor technology that made it possible, Xanthar countered. You served the system that authorized her abduction and transformation. Where does your responsibility begin and end, Colonel? Emma started to protest, but Xanthar raised a hand, silencing her. The question is for Colonel Walker alone. Walker felt the weight of 5 alien gazes upon him. I bear responsibility, he said finally. Not for the specific acts committed against Dr. Grant, but for being part of a system that allowed it to happen, for following orders without questioning them enough, for believing that what we did in the name of security was always justified. He met Xanthar's multifaceted eyes. I can't undo that history, but I can choose a different path now. The council members communicated among themselves in a series of lights, sounds, and movements incomprehensible to human senses. Finally, Xanthar addressed them again. The council requires time to deliberate. You will be escorted back to your quarters. We will summon you when a determination has been reached. As they left the chamber, Emma moved closer to Walker. You didn't have to say that, she said quietly, about bearing responsibility. Yes, I did, Walker replied, because it's true. Back in their quarters, Emma paced restlessly, her wings twitching with agitation. Walker sat quietly watching her movements become increasingly erratic. Something's wrong, he said finally. What aren't you telling me? Emma stopped, her scales shifting to a dark purple he hadn't seen before. The implant, it's beginning to fail. Walker straightened. I thought that was what you wanted. It is, but... She pressed her hand to the base of her skull. The symbiote is becoming more active as the inhibitor degrades. It's trying to communicate more directly. Is it dangerous? I don't know, Emma admitted. The council said it's sentient. What if once the implant fails completely, it takes control? What if everything I've fought to preserve just disappears? Walker approached her slowly. That won't happen. You can't know that, Emma said, her voice rising. You heard Xanthar. The symbiote has been damaged too. What if it's driven insane by what they did to us? What if it wants revenge? Then we'll deal with it, Walker said firmly. Together. Emma's laugh held an edge of hysteria. Together, you barely know me, Colonel. Why are you still here? Because I made a choice, Walker replied, meeting her gaze steadily. The same choice I should have made years ago when I first saw the potential for abuse in the technology I helped create. Better late than never. Emma started to respond when a spasm of pain contorted her features. She doubled over, wings snapping outward involuntarily. Walker caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her to sit. The implant, he asked, already knowing the answer. She nodded, unable to speak through the pain. Her scales rippled with waves of color, blue to purple to something darker, almost black. Walker placed his hand against the back of her neck, feeling the implant beneath her scales. What can I do? He asked, frustration edging his voice. He was accustomed to problems he could shoot or strategize against, not this insidious internal battle. Pressure, Emma gasped. Between my wings, where the scales are thickest. Walker moved behind her, placing both palms against her back. The scales felt like polished stone, warm and smooth beneath his hands. Here, harder, she instructed through gritted teeth. He pressed down, fingers finding the ridge of her spine. Emma made a sound that was part pain, part relief. Her wings trembled, brushing his arms. Just like that, she breathed. Don't stop. Walker maintained the pressure, feeling the tension slowly drain from her body. Her breathing deepened, evened out. The scales beneath his hands shifted from agitated purple back to a calmer blue. Better, he asked quietly. Yes, she sighed. Thank you. Neither of them moved for several moments. Walker found himself smoothing his palms along her spine, an instinctive gesture of comfort that seemed to help stabilize the symbiote. No one's touched me like this, Emma said suddenly, her voice barely audible. Not like this, not gentle. For 3 years, everyone who touched me either wanted to hurt me or study me. Walker started to pull his hands away. I'm sorry I didn't. No, Emma interrupted, reaching back to stop him. Don't be sorry, just don't stop. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was prepared to name. Walker's hands resumed their careful exploration, mapping the architecture of her back, the delicate connection where her wings merged with her shoulder blades, the places where human skin persisted like islands in an azure sea. This is insane, Emma whispered. I shouldn't want this. Why not? Because... She trailed off, then stood suddenly, turning to face him. The vest she'd taken from a fallen soldier on Prometheus Station hung open, and she made no move to close it. Her wings spread slightly, scales catching the subtle light of their quarters. This is what I am now, Walker. Not human, not fully, a monster wearing a woman's face. Walker stood slowly. He reached out, cupping her face in both hands, thumbs brushing the scales along her cheekbones. You're a woman who survived something that killed everyone else. You're brilliant and strong and still fighting. His eyes held hers. And yes, you're beautiful. Emma's scales flushed a shade of blue he hadn't seen before, something almost luminescent. For a moment, she looked achingly human despite everything else. You're insane, she said, but there was no conviction in her words. Probably, Walker agreed. She kissed him desperate, encircling her clawed hands fisting in his tactical vest, while his arms went around her waist. She tasted like copper and something sweet. The scales along her neck warmed under his palm. Her wings spread, creating a curtain around them both. The chamber's communication system chimed, shattering the moment. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Emma touched her lips, looking stunned. I didn't mean, she began. Yes, you did, Walker said gently. So did I. The chime sounded again, followed by Xanthar's voice. Colonel Walker, Dr. Grant, the council has reached a determination and requests your presence. Emma's expression shifted from confusion to resolve. She straightened her vest, her scales settling into a steady blue. We should go. Walker nodded, trying to center himself. Lead the way, Doctor. As they exited their quarters, Emma's hand found his cool, scaled fingers intertwining with his own. They walked in silence, both aware that whatever the council decided would determine their future, individually and together. The council chamber had reconfigured itself since their testimony. The elevated platforms had descended, creating a more equitable arrangement. The 5 council members still maintained their positions, but the sense of judgment had softened into something closer to diplomatic discussion. We have reviewed your testimony and corroborating evidence, Xanthar began. The council's determination is as follows. The actions taken against Dr. Emma Grant constitute violations of concordance law regarding sentient rights, biological experimentation, and weapons prohibition. The crystalline council member's voice translated as a series of musical tones. Both human governments involved must answer for these crimes. Formal censure will be issued and reparations demanded. Dr. Grant will be granted asylum under concordance protection. Another member declared its gaseous form shifting patterns as it spoke. All human claims upon her person are void. She is recognized as a refugee and a person of scientific significance. Emma's legs nearly buckled. Walker's arm went around her waist, supporting her as she processed these words. Freedom. Actual, recognized freedom. After 3 years of captivity. What about the symbiote? She asked, her voice barely steady. The Corellian entity bonded to you has been irreversibly altered, Xanthar explained. It cannot be separated from you without destroying you both. However, our medical technology may be able to remove the neural inhibitor implant, allowing for natural communication between you and the symbiote. Natural communication, Emma repeated. You mean without forced control from either side? Precisely, Bam, Xanthar confirmed. A true symbiosis rather than parasitic domination. Emma's wings trembled with emotion. I accept. Please remove the implant. Xanthar turned to Walker. Colonel Walker, your situation is more complex. Your government will not welcome your return. You have committed what they will view as treason, regardless of your ethical reasoning. Walker nodded, having expected this. I understood the consequences when I made my decision. The Council therefore extends asylum to you as well, Xanthar continued, should you wish to accept it. Walker glanced at Emma, standing straighter now with the promise of freedom. And what would I do under Concordance protection? I'm a soldier. It's all I know. The Council requires Dr. Grant's assistance as a liaison, Xanthar explained. Someone who understands both human and Corellian perspectives. She will need an advisor familiar with human military operations and diplomatic protocols. You're offering us jobs, Walker said with a raised eyebrow. We are offering purpose and protection, Xanthar corrected, and the freedom to define what you become. Dr. Grant has proven that transformation need not mean loss, that one can become something new while remaining fundamentally oneself. The Council believes there is much we can learn from you both. Emma straightened a new determination in her posture. I accept your offer, but on one condition. Name it, Xanthar said. You help me remove the implant immediately. I want full control back. No more overrides, no more triggers, no one inside my head except me and the symbiote. Our medical staff will begin preparations at once, Xanthar agreed. Walker felt Emma's scales shift under his hand, warming, brightening to a blue so vivid it seemed to pulse with its own light. She looked up at him, a genuine smile transforming her face. Ready to start over? She asked softly. With you, Walker replied. Absolutely. The medical procedure took 6 hours. Walker waited outside the surgical bay, watching through transparent panels as Concordance physicians worked with instruments that seemed to phase through matter rather than cut it. Emma lay unconscious on a platform that conformed to her wings, her scales dim and gray during the procedure. When they finally emerged, the lead physician, a being with too many limbs and bioluminescent markings across his body, approached Walker. The implant has been removed. It said, its translation coming through as a gentle voice. The neural tissue will heal. The symbiote is responding positively. She will wake soon. Walker entered the bay, moving to Emma's side. Up close, he could see the fresh surgical site at the base of her skull, already sealed with some kind of biological adhesive that matched the color of her scales. He took her hand, carefully settling into a chair beside the platform. Her scales flickered, then her eyes opened. Walker. Right here, he assured her. Emma sat up slowly, reaching back to touch her neck. Her expression transformed when she felt only smooth scales instead of the implant's hard edges. It's gone, she whispered, wonder filling her voice. It's really gone. How do you feel? Walker asked. Like I've been carrying weight for so long I forgot what it felt like without it, she said. Her scales shifted through colors, blue to violet to a shade of turquoise he hadn't seen before. The symbiote feels different too, calmer, almost happy, if that makes sense. Walker brushed his thumb across her knuckles. The Council assigned us quarters, separate rooms if you'd prefer, or Emma prompted, her scales brightening with warmth flooding the blue. Or we could share, Walker finished. Your choice. I'd like that, she said softly. Sharing. As Emma rested, recovering from the procedure, Walker found himself drawn to a viewport overlooking the vast expanse of space. Stars wheeled past as the Concordance ship traveled through the darkness. He thought about everything he'd left behind. His cabin in Montana, his career, his world. There should have been regret, but instead he felt only certainty. A reflection appeared in the viewport beside his own. Emma standing behind him, wings slightly extended. She'd been given new clothing by the Concordance, something that accommodated her changed physiology while providing dignity the military fatigues had lacked. Second thoughts, she asked. Walker shook his head. Just thinking about how life takes unexpected turns. Having regrets about saving the monster. There was a lightness in her tone that hadn't been there before, though a hint of real question lingered beneath. Walker turned to face her. I never saved a monster. I saved a brilliant scientist who happened to have wings and scales. His hand reached up, gently touching the side of her face. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Emma leaned into his touch, her scales warming beneath his palm. What happens now? Now, Walker said, we create something new, together. I've never been a diplomat before, Emma mused, and I've never been an advisor to a woman with wings, Walker countered. We'll learn together. Emma moved closer, her wings creating a private space around them both. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me when everyone else saw only a weapon. Walker pulled her gently into his arms. Thank you for reminding me what I'm supposed to be fighting for. The stars continued their silent journey across the viewport as the Concordance ship carried them deeper into space away from Earth and toward a future neither could have imagined. For the first time in years, Walker felt truly at peace. He had been sent to capture a monster, but found a woman who begged to be free. And in freeing her, he had somehow freed himself as well. The transformation began with a tremor. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Emma's body convulsed, her back arching as she collapsed to the floor of their quarters. Walker was at her side instantly, hands seeking purchase on her rapidly changing form. Emma, what's happening? Her scales pulsed with energy, cycling through colors faster than his eyes could track. Her wings spread involuntarily, the membranes becoming more translucent veins of light, tracing complex patterns across them. The blue that had become familiar deepened to something approaching indigo, then shifted to a rich purple that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the ambient light. The symbiote, she gasped, her voice layered with harmonics that hadn't been there before. It's integrating further. Now that the implant is gone, it's trying to communicate. Walker cradled her head, feeling helpless as her body shuddered against him. Should I call the Concordance medical team? No. Emma managed, her clawed fingers digging into his arm. It's not attacking. It's reaching out. I can almost understand. Her eyes changed, the familiar brown irises expanding until they consumed the whites entirely. Geometric patterns formed within them, constantly shifting like fractals building upon themselves. Walker held her tightly as she wrote out the convulsions, murmuring reassurances he wasn't sure she could hear. Minutes stretched like hours until finally the seizure began to subside. Emma's breathing steadied, her scales settling into a new baseline color, a deep royal blue with hints of violet where the light struck them directly. Her eyes returned to something closer to human, though the irises retained an iridescent quality they hadn't possessed before. Emma, Walker ventured cautiously, are you still with me? She blinked slowly, focusing on his face with evident effort. Yes, I'm here. We're here. The subtle shift in pronoun wasn't lost on Walker. Emma sat up carefully, wings folding against her back with new precision. The symbiote. I can hear it now, not words exactly, more like impressions, emotions, memories. What is it saying, Walker helped her to her feet, noting how her movements had become more fluid, almost graceful. It's afraid, Emma said softly, confused. It was taken from its home, subjected to experiments it couldn't understand. Just like me. She touched her temple gently. It didn't want to hurt anyone. The implant created false threat responses, driving it to attack. It's sorry. Walker studied her face, looking for signs that this was no longer Emma speaking, that the symbiote had somehow taken control. But the expressions, the micro-movements, they were still hers. Can it understand me? He asked. Emma nodded. Through me. It's learning our language patterns, our conceptual frameworks. It's remarkably adaptive. Then tell it I understand about being used as a weapon against your will. Walker said, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years of military service. And that I don't hold it responsible for what happened on Prometheus Station. Emma's expression softened, her scales rippling with a brief pulse of lighter blue. It appreciates that. It recognizes you as a protector. It wants to help protect me. Us, too. Before Walker could respond, the communication system chimed. Xanthar's voice came through, carrying an unusual tension. Colonel Walker, Dr. Grant, the Council requests your immediate presence. A situation has developed. They exchanged concerned glances. We're on our way, Walker replied. As they hurried through the corridors, Emma moved with a newfound grace, her wings no longer awkwardly folded, but perfectly balanced against her back. Walker noticed other changes too, subtle alterations in her posture, the way her eyes tracked movement, how her scales seemed to respond to the ship's ambient energy fields. "You're different," he observed. "Yes," Emma acknowledged. "The symbiote is helping repair damage from the implant. Neural pathways, muscle coordination. It's like having a second nervous system working in parallel with my own." "Is it safe?" Walker couldn't keep the concern from his voice. Emma offered a small, reassuring smile. "Safer than having the implant. This is cooperation, not coercion. The symbiote wants harmony as much as I do." The council chamber had reconfigured yet again this time into what appeared to be a strategic command center. The 5 council members were gathered around a holographic display showing Earth Alliance military movements. Walker recognized the formations immediately, battle groups positioned for coordinated action. "Our deep space monitoring has detected significant human military mobilization," Xanthar began without preamble. 3 battle groups have been dispatched from Earth Alliance bases converging on coordinates near our current position. Walker studied the tactical display. "Someone tracked our shuttle. Probably had a fail-safe beacon we missed." "Precisely our assessment," Xanthar agreed. "General Phillips appears to have convinced the Alliance Security Council that Dr. Grant represents an imminent threat to Earth security." Emma's scales darkened. "They're coming to capture me, or destroy me. That is their stated objective," Xanthar confirmed. "However, our analysis suggests a secondary motivation. The Earth Alliance Security Council is unaware of Project Eclipse's true nature. Phillips and his associates are likely attempting to eliminate evidence of their unauthorized experimentation before it can be exposed." "How long until they reach us?" Walker asked, military training taking over. "Approximately 12 Earth hours," Xanthar replied. "The Council is deliberating our response. Concordance law forbids direct military engagement with pre-integration species except in self-defense. However, we cannot surrender Dr. Grant to those who would harm her." Walker's mind raced through tactical options. "What about diplomatic channels? If we could reveal the truth about Project Eclipse to the legitimate Earth authorities—" "Communications have been attempted," Xanthar interrupted. "All diplomatic frequencies are being blocked or redirected by Alliance military protocols. It appears General Phillips has implemented emergency security measures that effectively isolate the approaching battle groups from civilian oversight. He's operating outside the chain of command," Walker concluded grimly, "using military assets for a cover-up." Emma stepped forward, her wings shifting nervously. "The symbiote has information that might help. When I was connected to Prometheus Station's systems, it absorbed data, including communications protocols and authorization codes. We might be able to bypass Phillips's communications blackout." All council members turned toward her, their alien gazes unreadable. "This would require interfacing with the concordance systems," Xanthar noted. "A significant security risk." "I understand," Emma replied, "but the alternative is armed conflict between human and concordance forces, a first contact war scenario that benefits no one." Walker moved to stand beside her. "It's worth the risk. Emma and I both understand Earth military protocols. If we can establish direct communication with Alliance civilian leadership, we can expose Phillips's operation before shots are fired." The council members communicated among themselves in their incomprehensible language of lights, sounds, and movements. Finally, Xanthar addressed them again. "The council approves this approach. You will be escorted to our communications center and provided necessary resources. However, we must establish containment protocols. If the symbiote attempts to access restricted concordance systems—" "It won't," Emma interrupted with uncharacteristic confidence. "The symbiote understands the stakes. It has no desire to compromise concordance security." Her voice softened. "It just wants to prevent more violence." Xanthar's antennae quivered in what Walker was beginning to recognize as acknowledgement. "Very well, follow me." The Concordance Communications Center defied human technological concepts. Instead of screens and control panels, the room contained what appeared to be pools of liquid light, responsive to touch and thought patterns. Emma approached one such pool hesitantly, her reflection shimmering on its surface. "This is a neural interface matrix," Xanthar explained. "It can be configured to accommodate your biology and the symbiote's neural patterns. Through it, you may attempt to access Earth communication systems." Emma glanced at Walker, uncertainty flickering across her features. "I've never done anything like this before." "You don't have to," Walker reminded her. We can find another way. She shook her head, scales rippling with determination. No, this is our best option. The symbiote understands data systems. It just needs a way to express that understanding. Taking a deep breath, Emma placed her hands into the pool of light. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The liquid surged upward, enveloping her arms to the elbows. Her eyes widened, then unfocused as the interface connected with her mind. Walker watched tensely as information began flowing through the matrix, patterns and symbols appearing in the light too rapidly for him to comprehend. Emma's scales pulsed in rhythm with the data flow, her wings extending slightly as she processed the incoming information. She is successfully interfacing with the system, Xanthar observed. The symbiote appears to be facilitating compatibility between her neural patterns and our technology. Is she in danger? Walker asked, unable to mask his concern. The process is taxing but not harmful, Xanthar assured him. The matrix limits data flow to sustainable levels for the user's biology. Minutes passed as Emma stood motionless, connected to the alien system. Suddenly her expression changed. Surprise, then fierce concentration. Her voice when she spoke had that layered quality again, as though multiple voices were harmonizing. I found a backdoor into the Alliance emergency broadcast system, she announced. Military comms are locked down, but civilian emergency channels are still accessible through orbital relays. If we can transmit evidence of Project Eclipse through those channels, it will reach every major civilian leadership terminal simultaneously. Walker stepped closer to the matrix. What do you need from me? Authorization codes. Emma replied, her focus still on the interface. Your command credentials might still be valid in the emergency systems. Phillips wouldn't have thought to revoke civilian emergency access. Walker recited his security clearance and authorization codes. Emma nodded as the information flowed through her into the system. It's working, she said. I'm establishing a direct link to the Alliance Civilian Emergency Network. We need to prepare our transmission, documentation of Project Eclipse, evidence of Phillips' violations, everything we have. The Council will provide all evidence gathered during our investigation, Xanthar confirmed, including recovered data from Prometheus Station. Walker realized a critical component was still missing. We need a face, someone the Alliance leadership will recognize and trust. He turned to Emma. It has to be me. I need to be the one delivering the message. Emma's expression grew troubled. They'll see you as a traitor, James. Phillips will have already painted you as a rogue agent. Exactly why it needs to be me, Walker insisted. I've served with distinction for 40 years. Many members of civilian leadership know me personally. If I'm willing to risk everything to expose this, they'll at least listen. After a moment's consideration, Emma nodded. The symbiote can help configure the matrix to record and transmit your message alongside the evidence package. Walker stepped back, collecting his thoughts. He'd given many mission briefings over his career, but none as important as this. The future of human-alien relations, and possibly Emma's survival, depended on his ability to convince Alliance leadership of Phillips' treachery. The matrix reconfigured, forming a recording interface. Walker stood straighter, summoning the commanding presence that had served him through decades of military service. My name is Colonel James Walker, Earth Alliance Special Operations ID number 37492 Alpha. I am transmitting this message on emergency protocols to expose illegal operations conducted by General Frank Phillips and associates within the Space Security Agency. Project Eclipse, classified as a research initiative, was in fact an unauthorized weapons program involving forced human experimentation and the exploitation of a sentient alien species. I have attached comprehensive evidence documenting these violations, including Phillips's deliberate deception of Alliance leadership regarding the nature and scope of the project. I was dispatched to eliminate the primary test subject, Dr. Emma Grant, who was kidnapped from her position at MIT and subjected to forced symbiotic bonding. Upon discovering the truth, I chose to extract Dr. Grant rather than terminate an innocent victim of military overreach. General Phillips is currently leading 3 battle groups toward Concordance Council space under false pretenses. He has implemented communication blackouts to prevent oversight, intending to eliminate evidence of his crimes. This action threatens to initiate hostile first contact with a significantly advanced civilization that has shown no aggression toward Earth. I urge immediate intervention to countermand Phillips' orders and recall the battle groups. The Concordance Council has expressed willingness for diplomatic engagement regarding these violations. Their primary concern is the protection of Dr. Grant and the sentient, symbiotic organism forcibly bonded to her. This transmission includes my full deposition, Dr. Grant's testimony, and recovered files from Prometheus Station. These documents provide irrefutable evidence of violations that contravene not only Alliance law, but basic human ethics. I stand ready to face any legitimate inquiry into my actions, but I cannot remain silent while criminal activity is conducted under the guise of national security. Walker out. The Matrix absorbed his message, integrating it with the evidence package Emma had compiled. She withdrew her hands from the interface, the liquid light receding back into the pool. "It's done," she said, her voice strained from the mental exertion. "Transmission complete. The package has been delivered to all 53 civilian leadership terminals simultaneously. Phillips can't stop it now." Walker moved to support her as she swayed slightly. "How long until we know if it worked?" "The Alliance Security Council will require time to evaluate the evidence and respond," Xanthar noted. "However, the approaching battle groups remain an immediate concern. They'll maintain course until given direct countermanding orders," Walker confirmed. "Standard protocol for blackout operations. Phillips has probably convinced them they're preventing an alien invasion." Emma straightened, her strength returning. "So we still have a potential combat situation in—" She glanced at Walker. 10 hours, he supplied. "Maybe less if they have increased velocity." Xanthar's multifaceted eyes gleamed in the chamber's light. "The Council has authorized defensive measures should diplomacy fail. We will not fire first, but neither will we allow ourselves or those under our protection to be harmed." The implications hung heavily in the air. First contact between humanity and the Concordance could begin with bloodshed. Exactly the scenario Walker had dedicated his life to preventing between human nations. Emma's hand found his scaled fingers intertwining with his own. "We'll find another when," she said, "This can't have been for nothing." 8 hours later, the situation had grown more dire. The Alliance battle groups had maintained course, accelerating to reduce intercept time. No response had come from civilian leadership, suggesting Phillips might have implemented contingencies to contain even the emergency broadcast. Walker paced the strategy room where he and Emma had been monitoring the approaching forces. The Concordance ship had activated defensive systems, but remained on a steady course, neither fleeing nor moving to engage. "They're not slowing down," Walker observed grimly. 4 battle cruisers, 8 destroyer support craft. That's enough firepower to start a war. Emma studied the tactical display. The symbiote is analyzing their approach vector. It says they're forming a containment pattern, not an attack formation. They want to surround the Concordance vessel, not destroy it. "Capture rather than kill," Walker confirmed. "Phillips wants you back, and the symbiote." "That's not going to happen," Emma said, her scales darkening with resolve. Before Walker could respond, Xanthar entered the chamber. "We have received communication from the Alliance forces. Their commander requests to speak with you, Colonel Walker." Walker exchanged a glance with Emma. "Phillips." "No," Xanthar replied. "Admiral Helena Chen, First Fleet Command." Walker's eyebrows rose in surprise. Admiral Chen was a respected career officer known for her rigorous adherence to protocol and ethical standards. If she was commanding this operation instead of Phillips, perhaps their message had made an impact after all. "Put her through," Walker instructed. A holographic interface formed in the center of the room. Admiral Chen's image appeared, her uniform impeccable, her expression severe. "Colonel Walker," she began. Her voice clipped and professional. "Your transmission has created quite a situation back home." Walker maintained military posture, addressing her as a superior officer despite his unofficial status. "Admiral, I'm pleased the Security Council received our evidence." "Oh, they received it," Chen confirmed, "along with General Phillips' assertion that you've been compromised by alien influence and are suffering from cognitive manipulation." Her eyes narrowed. "He's presented compelling evidence that Dr. Grant's condition is contagious and that you're already showing signs of symbiotic infection." Walker kept his expression neutral. "That's a convenient explanation for why I might expose his illegal operation, Admiral. Have you reviewed the complete evidence package?" "I have," Chen replied, "which is the only reason we're having this conversation. The documentation is troubling, but I'm not convinced it's authentic." "What would convince you?" Emma stepped into view beside Walker, her transformed appearance clearly visible. Chen's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise in her otherwise composed demeanor. "Dr. Grant, I presume?" "Yes," Emma confirmed. "I understand your skepticism, Admiral. In your position, I would question everything too. But ask yourself this: why would the Concordance, an advanced civilization capable of destroying your battle groups with minimal effort, choose instead to help us expose a human rights violation? What would they gain by fabricating such elaborate evidence?" Chen was silent for a moment, considering. "Your point is noted, Doctor. However, my orders come directly from the Security Council. I am instructed to secure your return to Alliance custody for medical evaluation and containment." "That's not going to happen, Admiral," Walker stated firmly. "Dr. Grant is under Concordance protection, recognized as a refugee from human rights violations. Any attempt to forcibly remove her would constitute an act of war against the Concordance." Chen's expression hardened. "Are you threatening Alliance forces, Colonel?" "I'm stating facts," Walker replied evenly. "The Concordance Council has extended legal protection to Dr. Grant. They've also offered asylum to me, which I've accepted. We are no longer under Alliance jurisdiction." "You've renounced your citizenship?" Chen asked, genuine surprise breaking through her professional mask. "I've chosen to stand against crimes committed in humanity's name," Walker corrected. "The same oath I took when I joined the service, to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Phillips is the domestic enemy here, Admiral. He's using you to cover up his crimes." Chen's expression shifted subtly. Walker had worked with her years ago during the Ganymede crisis. She was tough, but fundamentally ethical. "What are you proposing, Colonel?" she asked finally. "A neutral party investigation," Walker suggested. "Allow a mixed team, Alliance and Concordance representatives, to review all evidence regarding Project Eclipse. If Phillips has nothing to hide, he should welcome the scrutiny. The Security Council would never authorize external involvement in a classified military operation," Chen pointed out. "Then perhaps it's time they learn the full scope of what's been done in their name," Emma interjected. "Admiral, I've transmitted a private data package to your personal command terminal. It contains Phillips' direct orders regarding my termination, including contingencies for eliminating any Alliance personnel who learn too much about Project Eclipse. I suggest you review it before deciding who really represents a threat to Alliance security." Chen's eyes narrowed again, but she made a subtle gesture to an off-screen officer. After a moment, her expression changed, hardening into something dangerous. "Hold position," she instructed. "No aggressive maneuvers from either side. I need 1 hour to consult with my command staff." The transmission ended, leaving Walker and Emma in tense silence. "What did you send her?" Walker asked quietly. "Phillips' kill list," Emma replied. "It includes Admiral Chen's name, scheduled for retirement once Project Eclipse reached its final phase. The symbiote found it in the Prometheus data. Phillips planned to eliminate anyone with enough knowledge or authority to challenge him." Walker whistled softly. "That would certainly get her attention." "The Admiral appears to be reconsidering her position," Xanthar observed. "However the battle groups maintain their approach, we must prepare for all outcomes." Emma's scales rippled with nervous energy. "If diplomacy fails—" "It won't," Walker assured her, though he couldn't entirely convince himself. "Chen is a good officer. She'll make the right call." The next hour passed with excruciating slowness. Walker paced the chamber, reviewing contingency plans with Xanthar, while Emma monitored the approaching battle groups. The symbiote's enhanced perception allowed her to detect subtle changes in formation and energy signatures that even Concordance sensors struggled to identify. "They're powering weapon systems," she reported suddenly, "not activating, but bringing them to standby status." Walker moved to her side. "Standard approach protocol for unknown vessels. Doesn't necessarily mean they're preparing to attack. Their forward shields have increased power allocation by 30%. Emma continued, her eyes tracking data only she could see. "2 destroyers are moving to flanking positions." Before Walker could respond, the communications system activated again. Admiral Chen's image reappeared, her expression now grimly determined. "Colonel Walker, I've reviewed the additional evidence. I've also attempted to contact General Phillips for clarification. He has refused direct communication and instead issued orders through intermediaries for my battle group to commence attack operations." Her jaw tightened. I have reason to believe these orders did not originate from the Security Council. Walker kept his expression neutral, though relief flooded through him. What's your next move, Admiral? I'm implementing Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha, Chen replied. Suspension of current orders pending investigation of command integrity. My battle groups will maintain position, but will not engage unless attacked. She leaned forward slightly. I've also transmitted all evidence to 3 separate civilian oversight committees. Phillips's communication blackout has been circumvented. Thank you, Admiral, Walker said sincerely. Chen's expression remained severe. Don't thank me yet, Colonel. I've bought us time, nothing more. Phillips still commands significant resources and influence, and I've potentially ended my career by countermanding direct orders. You've upheld your oath, Walker countered, just as I tried to do. Something like respect flickered in Chen's eyes. Perhaps, in any case, I'm dispatching a diplomatic vessel to rendezvous with the Concordance ship. I request permission for a small delegation to come aboard and discuss this situation directly. Xanthar, who had remained silent during the exchange, now stepped forward. The Council accepts your proposal, Admiral Chen. We welcome diplomatic engagement. Chen nodded briskly. The delegation will arrive in approximately 3 hours. Chen out. As the transmission ended, Emma released a breath she'd been holding. Her scales had lightened considerably, reflecting her relief. That went better than expected, she observed. Chen's a professional, Walker explained. She follows orders, but not blindly. Once she saw evidence that Phillips was operating outside proper authority, her course was clear. The immediate crisis appears to be averted, Xanthar noted. However, this is merely the beginning of a complex diplomatic situation. The Council must decide how to proceed regarding Project Eclipse and the broader implications for human concordance relations. Walker nodded thoughtfully. First contact scenarios are rarely smooth, but this one's been especially complicated. At least they're talking instead of shooting, Emma said. She touched Walker's arm gently. You made that happen. We made it happen, he corrected. Your evidence, the symbiote's assistance with the communications, it all contributed. Emma's expression grew distant for a moment, as though listening to an internal voice. The symbiote says it's grateful for the chance to help prevent violence. It's spent 3 years being forced to cause harm. This feels like redemption. Walker covered her hand with his own. I understand the feeling. The diplomatic meeting took place in a chamber specifically reconfigured for the occasion. The Alliance delegation consisted of Admiral Chen and 3 senior staff members, all watching the Concordance Council members with barely concealed amazement. First contact with an alien civilization. Not as they had imagined it would happen, but historical nonetheless. Walker and Emma occupied an unusual position, neither fully aligned with the Alliance nor with the Concordance, but essential to both sides' understanding. Walker provided context for Alliance military protocols and chain of command, while Emma, with the symbiote's assistance, helped translate complex Concordance concepts for human comprehension. The Council acknowledges the complexity of this situation. Xanthar began once formalities had been exchanged. Project Eclipse represents a significant violation of Concordance principles regarding sentient rights and biological experimentation. However, we recognize that these actions were taken by a small faction within your government, not with broad authorization. Admiral Chen nodded. The Alliance Security Council has initiated a full investigation into General Phillips and Project Eclipse. Preliminary findings confirm that authorized research parameters were massively exceeded and that civilian oversight was deliberately circumvented. What about the other victims? Emma asked quietly. I wasn't the first test subject, just the first successful one. The uncomfortable silence followed. Finally, Chen spoke. Records indicate 17 prior test subjects. None survived the bonding process. Their families were told they died in various research accidents. Emma's scales darkened with grief and anger. They deserve justice. Their families deserve the truth. The investigation will be thorough, Chen assured her. Those responsible will be held accountable. And Dr. Grant, Walker prompted, what is her status according to Alliance law? Chen hesitated. Complicated. Technically, she's still an Alliance citizen. However, given the circumstances of her transformation and the Concordance claim of refugee status, Dr. Grant cannot return to Earth in her current state, Xanthar interjected. Your society lacks the understanding and infrastructure to accommodate her unique physiology. More importantly, the symbiotic organism bonded with her is a protected species under concordance law. The symbiote has expressed its desire to remain with Emma, Walker added. It's no longer a parasite or a weapon. It's become a true symbiotic partner. Emma nodded, her scales rippling with subtle colors. We've reached an understanding. Neither of us can survive without the other now, but more importantly, neither of us wants to. We've both been transformed by this experience. Admiral Chen studied Emma with poorly concealed fascination. And your mind, your memories. I'm still Emma Grant, she confirmed. Changed certainly, enhanced in some ways, but my core identity remains intact. She smiled slightly. I still prefer coffee to tea, enjoy terrible science fiction movies, and can't carry a tune to save my life. A hint of humor flickered across Chen's face. Good to know some things remain constant. Her expression grew serious again. The Alliance cannot formally recognize the Concordance's claim on you without proper diplomatic protocols in place. However, given the exceptional circumstances, we can acknowledge your right to seek asylum with a neutral third party. That seems a reasonable compromise, Xanthar acknowledged. The Council proposes Dr. Grant serve as a liaison between our civilizations. Her unique perspective bridges both human and concordance understanding. And Colonel Walker, Chen asked, turning toward him. His situation is similarly complex. Technically, he violated direct orders and could be subject to court-martial. I'm aware of the consequences, Walker stated calmly. I stand by my decisions. Chen studied him for a long moment. The Alliance owes you a debt, Colonel, whether they acknowledge it publicly or not. You prevented what could have been a catastrophic first contact scenario. She straightened. I will recommend your actions be classified as a sanctioned, deep cover operation to expose Project Eclipse. It's not entirely honest, but it provides legal coverage. Walker blinked in surprise. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me, Chen replied with a hint of a smile. Just keep doing what you've always done, protecting humanity even from itself. The negotiations continued for hours, establishing preliminary protocols for human concordance interaction. By the time the Alliance delegation departed, a framework had been created, one that recognized Emma's unique status and positioned her as a crucial link between two civilizations. 2 days later, Walker stood at the now familiar viewport watching the Alliance vessels begin their journey back to Earth. They carried with them evidence of Project Eclipse, the beginnings of a diplomatic framework with the concordance and a changed understanding of humanity's place in the universe. Emma joined him, her reflection appearing beside his in the transparent Sauron. Her transformation had continued to evolve, the symbiote helping to refine her new form, repairing damage, optimizing neural connections. Her scales now possessed an iridescent quality, shifting subtly with her moods in the ambient light. Her wings had healed completely. The torn membranes regenerated into structures of remarkable strength and flexibility. What are you thinking? She asked, standing close enough that her wing brushed his shoulder. That life takes unexpected turns, Walker replied. A week ago, I was a retired soldier living alone in a cabin in Montana. Now I'm an alien diplomat on a starship. Emma laughed softly. And I was a prisoner who had given up hope. Now I'm, whatever I am, free at least. Walker turned to face her, taking in the changes that had become beautiful to him rather than alien. The Council wants us to visit 3 systems where Corellian symbiotes have been documented. They believe your experience might help establish better understanding of symbiotic potential. A research mission. Emma's eyes brightened with scientific curiosity. That sounds wonderful, actually. The symbiote is excited too. It's never encountered others of its kind in controlled environments. There's more, Walker continued. Admiral Chen has authorized me as the official Alliance observer for these expeditions. Apparently, I'm now a cross-species diplomatic specialist. Emma's scales rippled with amusement. From soldier to diplomat, quite the career change at 68. I'm adaptable, Walker replied with a smile. Her expression grew more serious. Are you sure about this, James, about us? About all of it? You've given up so much already. Walker reached out his fingers, tracing the curve of her cheek where scales met skin. I haven't given up anything I truly needed, and I've gained something I never expected to find at this stage of life. What's that? Emma asked, leaning into his touch. Purpose, connection. He drew her closer. A future worth fighting for. Emma's wings enfolded them both, creating a private world within the vastness of the ship. The symbiote says you make me happy, she whispered. It can tell from my neural patterns. Smart creature, Walker murmured before kissing her gently. Beyond the viewport, stars stretched into infinity, each one a potential destination, each one part of the vast unknown they would now explore together. Walker had spent his life defending borders, between nations, between ideologies. Now he found himself transcending the ultimate border, between species, between worlds. He had been sent to capture a monster and found a woman who begged to be free. In freeing her, he had freed himself from the constraints of unquestioning obedience, from the narrowness of human-centered thinking, from the isolation of his self-imposed exile. As the Concordance ship accelerated toward distant stars, Walker felt no regret for the life he'd left behind, only anticipation for the journey ahead, and gratitude for the extraordinary woman with whom he would share it. The medical bay of the Concordance ship hummed with activity as final preparations were made for their departure. Emma underwent one last examination, the Concordance physicians monitoring the continuing integration of the symbiote. Remarkable. The lead physician noted its translucent limbs manipulating scanning equipment. The neural pathways have stabilized completely. The symbiote has established perfect homeostasis with your biological systems. Emma flexed her wings, testing their movement. It feels natural now, like I've always been this way. Adaptive memory integration, the physician explained. Your brain and the symbiote have synchronized experiences. What was once foreign becomes familiar. Walker watched from nearby, still amazed by the transformation he'd witnessed. Not just the physical changes, but the evolution of Emma herself, from desperate prisoner to confident explorer. Her scientific curiosity had returned full force, enhanced by the symbiote's unique perspective on the universe. Will she continue to change? He asked the physician. Refinement rather than transformation, came the reply. The major physiological adaptations are complete. Future changes will be primarily neurological, enhanced sensory processing, improved communication with the symbiote, potentially new abilities as the integration deepens. Emma joined Walker as the examination concluded. All systems go, Colonel, she said with a smile that transformed her scaled features. Ready for our first mission? The research vessel departs in 2 hours, Walker confirmed. The Council has provided us with comprehensive data on Corellian habitats and behaviors. Should be an interesting expedition. Interesting, Emma repeated. That's one word for it. We're about to study the only other known examples of the species currently living inside me. I'd call that unprecedented. They made their way to their shared quarters to collect their few possessions. The Concordance had provided them with specialized equipment adapted for Emma's unique physiology and communication needs with the symbiote. As Emma packed, Walker found himself watching her movements, the graceful coordination between her human musculature and the wings that should have been awkward but somehow weren't. The scales that caught light and reflected it in subtle patterns that seemed to communicate emotion as clearly as her expressions. You're staring, she noted without looking up. Admiring, Walker corrected. There's a difference. Emma turned to him, her head tilted slightly. The symbiote says your neural patterns show elevated dopamine and oxytocin when you look at me. It finds human attraction fascinating. Walker raised an eyebrow. Is nothing private with your new roommate? It's learning about boundaries. Emma laughed. I've explained that some observations should be kept to itself. Good to know. Walker moved closer, taking her hands in his. How are you really feeling about all this new life, new mission, new everything? Emma's expression grew thoughtful, her scales shifting to a deeper blue. Scared, excited, grateful. She squeezed his hands gently. For most of the past 3 years, I was just trying to survive each day to maintain enough of myself that I wouldn't disappear completely. Now I'm looking at a future I never imagined possible. Any regrets? Walker asked softly. About us. Emma shook her head. None. About what happened to Mikko. She paused, considering. I wouldn't have chosen this transformation. But now that it's happened, I can't imagine returning to who I was before. The symbiote has become part of me, not just physically, but in how I perceive the world, how I think. Her wings shifted, creating a soft rustling sound. I'm more than I was, James. Different, but more. Walker nodded, understanding. In his long military career, he'd seen how trauma changed people, sometimes destroying them, sometimes forging them into something stronger. Emma had endured unimaginable suffering and emerged not just intact, but transformed in ways that transcended the purely physical. The Council has received your request regarding Earth communications, he said, changing the subject. They've approved secure monitored contact with your family. Emma's scales paled with surprise. They have, I didn't think, it's been so long, wasn't sure they'd even want to hear from me. According to Admiral Chen, your parents never stopped looking for you, Walker told her. They've been petitioning the Alliance for information about your disappearance since you went missing. Tears gathered in Emma's eyes. One human reaction, the transformation hadn't changed. I don't even know what to say to them. How do I explain this? She gestured to her transformed body. The truth, Walker suggested, as much as security protocols allow. They deserve that much. Emma nodded, composing herself. I'll speak with them before we depart. Will you stay with me when I do? Of course, Walker promised. Whatever you need. The ship's communication system chimed Xanthar's voice coming through. Colonel Walker, Dr. Grant. The research vessel Harmonic Inquiry is prepared for departure. The Council requests your presence for final briefing. Acknowledged, Walker replied. We're on our way. As they made their final preparations, Emma paused at the viewport for one last look at the receding Alliance vessels. Earth wasn't visible from this distance, just the ships returning to it, carrying news of her transformation, her survival, her new purpose. Ready, Walker asked, offering his hand. Emma took it, her scaled fingers intertwining with his human ones. Ready. Together they stepped forward, not as captor and monster, not as soldier and scientist, but as partners in an unprecedented journey across the stars. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges neither could anticipate, but they would face them together, transformed but unbroken. Behind them, Prometheus Station was dust and memory. Before them lay a universe of possibilities, and between them a bond forged in the crucible of suffering and choice. The choice to see beyond appearances, beyond orders, beyond the limitations of human understanding. In the end, Walker reflected that's what truly mattered. Not what they had been sent to do, but what they had chosen to become. Not monsters or weapons, but protectors of each other and of the fragile, precious connection between two vastly different worlds. As the research vessel Harmonic Inquiry prepared to depart, Walker found a moment of solitude in the observation dome. The vast expanse of stars stretched before him, countless worlds waiting to be discovered. At 68 years old, when most of his former comrades had settled into retirement with grandchildren and fishing trips, he stood at the threshold of an entirely new chapter. He removed the worn photograph of Margaret from his pocket, the one constant companion through every mission, every hardship. Her smile remained unchanged, but something had shifted in how he carried her memory. No longer a weight of guilt and regret, but a foundation that had helped shape him into the man who could make this impossible choice. You always said I needed a purpose bigger than orders, he whispered to her image. Took me 40 years to really understand what you meant. Walker thought back over his military career, the wars fought, the lines drawn, and defended the oaths sworn and kept. He had spent 4 decades believing he was protecting humanity by maintaining boundaries between nations, between ideologies. Now in the twilight of his life, he found himself erasing the ultimate boundary between species, between worlds. A sense of profound peace washed over him. The constant vigilance that had been his companion since his first deployment gradually relaxed its grip. Not gone entirely, some habits were too deeply ingrained to ever disappear completely, but transformed into something more nuanced, more purposeful than mere survival. Emma entered the dome quietly, her wings creating a gentle rustling sound that he'd already learned to recognize without turning. Second thoughts, she asked, coming to stand beside him. Walker shook his head, tucking the photograph away. Just making peace with the journey. You know the symbiote can sense your neural patterns, Emma said softly. It says you're experiencing something it's never detected in you before, a kind of harmony it doesn't have a concept for. In my line of work, we called it coming home, Walker replied, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. 40 years of following orders, securing objectives, defending lines on a map. Now I finally understand what I was meant to be fighting for all along. And what's that? Emma asked. Walker gestured toward the stars and to the space between them. Connection, understanding, the courage to see beyond our differences. His hand found hers naturally. Turns out an old soldier can learn new missions after all. As they stood together at the viewport, the Concordance ship accelerated toward distant stars, each one a potential destination in their shared journey. Walker had spent a lifetime defending humanity. Now he would help guide it toward a future greater than anyone had imagined. Not through force of arms or rigid protocol, but through the wisdom hard-won across 40 years of service, the ability to recognize what truly needed protecting, and the courage to stand for it whatever the cost. For the first time since he could remember, James Walker was exactly where he belonged.